coming in. I thought it would be fun to do kind of an end of the season pre-hot stove roundtable, and I really like the idea of getting different voices from the station. I'm sure everybody knows the morning and the afternoon that we have represented here, and Mike Salk and Bob Stelton. Of course, you've heard Charlie Furbush with us throughout the fall as well, and a lot to get to with what we have seen with this Mariners team. And just kind of to get things going, and because this is a roundtable, and I'm stealing the roundtable from the pregame radio show. It's something that we do the hour before every game, and it's a segment that we always have. It's a lot of fun. It's me, Rick Riz, Aaron Goldsmith, Gary Hill, Dave Sims, and we just kind of toss some topics around the table and usually get a good discussion out of it. And some days there's a little bit of a challenge, and we came up with a couple of games, and one of the games that we would play, and it was always on a getaway deal, was pack, forget, or steal. And these usually came up after bad road trips. I'll go ahead and let you know that, and you need a topic. And we're looking for something good, and that is what you absolutely have to remember to pack before you leave your hotel room and never come back. Forget is something you would just rather not see again. And, you know, it's that old shoe that maybe you leave under the bed in the hotel room that gives you an excuse to go buy new shoes when you get home. You know, the charger that's about ready to break that you leave plugged into the wall, that kind of thing. Just forget. Leave it. Let's not do that again. And then the steal from the road trips would be something that we saw on that trip from the other side that we would just love to have for the Mariners. I want to do that for this past season.
Okay.
Mike, I'm going to start with you.
Lucky me. Geez. Well, I mean, the obvious thing to keep from this season is the pitching, but I'll try to be a little bit more specific. I would say the starting pitching health. I don't have any idea how you keep that. I'm not even sure the Mariners know how they've kept it over the last couple of years. But, I mean, the one sort of ticking time bomb in the Mariner conversation is that we've gone a couple of years now without a lot of significant pitcher injuries. Not none. Obviously, Robbie Ray and, you know, Wu had his issues this year, etc. Not zero, but compared to, say, the Dodgers, who had 10 catastrophic injuries in their starting staff, if there's any way to keep that, that is an absolute must. And that's probably the easiest one for me to say. I mean, after that, it gets hard. I mean, forget. There's a lot of stuff that you'd want to forget from this year. I've been trying to for a while. I binge myself to try to.
What pains you the most, Mike?
I mean, yeah, all of it, right? I mean, there's just so much offensively. I think for me, it becomes easier when I look at Steele and I look at some of the teams that I found myself a little jealous of this year. And it wasn't all of the best teams in the league, but found myself jealous of a guy like that Oakland outfielder, Butler. I find myself jealous of an Ellie De La Cruz. I find myself jealous of some of these Bobby Witt, some of these just young, ferociously athletic players. And look, I don't know what the Mariners are going to commit to under Dan Wilson and moving forward. I think that's a conversation we'll have probably later in the roundtable. Mm-hmm. But in the last month or so, it sure seemed to be we want to be athletic. I wouldn't mind leaving some of the bunting behind in the hotel. I could do with a lot less bunting with a man on first and nobody out. But if the athleticism is going to be a part of it and running around, well, then go get guys that actually do that, right? I mean, that would mean forgetting Jorge Polanco somewhere else, even though I think $12 million, totally fair number for Jorge. He's not a runner. He's not athletic. He's not like those guys we were talking about. You need to get yourself some Lawrence Butlers and some Bobby Witts and some Ellie De La Cruzes or reasonable facsimiles of those guys in order to play the kind of style it looks like they want to play.
Good, and good things to come back to. Charlie?
It's a loaded question. Hard to put it all into perspective here over the course of the season, but if I wanted to pack anything, and you mentioned starting pitching, I want to mention the two guys of Bryce Miller and Brian Wu, who clearly did something we didn't see coming. They stepped up and acted like 2 and 3 starters in the rotation. So to see their advancement, it's they experienced so much, so they really should take another huge step forward going into next year. We'll see if both of them or one of them are on the team still, because I do think they're a valuable trade piece. Looking at the offense now, and forgetting, I want to forget the offense. I want to forget the amount of hits that they didn't get. I look at how many pitches seemingly were over the middle of the plate that they fouled off, missed, and didn't take an opportunity on. And you look around the league, and those pitches are hit. Those pitches are put in play, and usually, damage was done. So, when you look at the total amount of hits, I think we were second to last behind the White Sox. So clearly we need to get more offense and more hits more consistently. So, I think I'm totally going to forget all of the offense. The one thing I would love to steal, I think the bullpen needs a lockdown lefty. I look at Hader on the Astros. Weirdly enough. But,
you know what, though? You're absolutely right about that.
For sure. You've seen time and time again, and nothing against the lefties we have. Sauce has been great, but you need someone that's going to come in.
Great.
Okay, maybe
I
not.
don't have to say he's been great.
Yeah.
Effective at times.
Effective for the lefties we have.
Okay.
But, yeah, I think we need someone that's going to come in and get that big lefty out. It's a huge – it acts like a mini closer, if you will, to be able to, shut down the big lefties, and we're just going to continue to see him. So hopefully the Mariners can get a nice lefty here. I'd love to see that out of
the regression of Gabe Spire, was a huge bummer.
We saw the difference when Gabe Spire was at his best, what a difference that could make. And, we'll see if he's part of the team next year. I talked to him at the end of the year, and it was just about resting for him, getting 100%. We'll see. Bob,
I know. 162
put that coffee down.
I would. I thought Charlie was just going to keep going. No, I would pack more specifically. Obviously, the rotation. I mean, it's the best in baseball. But specifically, Brian Wu, when he was healthy, you could make the argument he was their most dominant pitcher. He was unreal when he was healthy. Now he started out injured, had a problem in the middle of the season, but toward the end, when he really was dialed in and felt physically comfortable. To me, he was as effective, if not more, than just about anybody in that rotation. So I love the potential of what we saw out of him. If they can figure out a way to keep him healthy and keep growing the innings count, that's huge. And hopefully they don't trade him. It's really going to make me nuts if they trade anybody out of the rotation. What I would leave would be the offense, and more specifically runners in scoring position. I can't tell you how many times I looked at – I'll watch a game and I go, man, they had traffic. What happened? I'd look at the box score and the runners in scoring position, 2 for 13, 11 left on base. And it felt like that was almost every other night. That's what the box score was. Double-digit left on base, 2 for 12, 3 for 13. Just awful. Just awful when they could get traffic and create problems on the base paths. They just were so ineffective with it. So that's specifically that and the strikeouts, because that's the other thing. They led the league. They came in second the year before. They made a concerted effort to rid themselves of the strikeouts, and then they led the league in strikeouts the following year after making that effort. So those two aspects of their offense really drove me nuts because, with advanced metrics, strikeouts have been devalued. Like, no big deal. It's not nearly as punitive. It's not frowned upon the way that it used to be. Bring shame back to the strikeout. Bring shame back to the strikeout. It's absurd because not every strikeout is created equal. It's not, hey, you struck out in the top of the first, there's nobody on. Okay. But where did their strikeouts occur? When they had traffic, when they had runners on second and third, and then you got two guys in a row come in, strike out, end the inning. It was so punitive. It was so damaging for a team that had a hard time manufacturing runs. So those two elements of the offense I would absolutely lose. And Steele, I'm with Salk. I'm jealous of somebody like Bobby Witt Jr., somebody who's got power and they hit for average and they've got speed and they play defense. I mean, just kind of that complete player who can do whatever you need at that given moment. That's my guy. That's
so
the guy.
shame on us then, Bob. Shame on all three of us. Seriously, shame on all three of us. Because you just said it. We want a guy like Bobby Witt Jr. We want a guy with speed and power
and everything
else. And
we have one.
None of us mentioned the thing that we all need to leave, which is Julio Rodriguez of 2024. Leave that Julio Rodriguez somewhere else and get the old Julio back, the one who does all of those things.
Well, is there a consistent Julio?
I don't know.
You've seen the spotty
but
Julio.
It's all
you
there.
saw it the year
Does
before.
anybody believe it's not all there?
No, it's totally there. We've seen it. But the problem is it comes in bunches. You'll have a drought like the year previous, and then he goes nuts in August of last season? Mm-hmm. He went crazy. And then by the end of the year, you look at the stats.
September this year, too. I mean, kind of went nuts again.
At the end of the year, you go, hey, pretty good WAR number, pretty good. I mean, it wasn't a down year, but you're like, yeah, but it all happened in this one area. And the rest of the time when you had runners in scoring position, you needed him to come up with that game-winning hit. He didn't do it.
But I guess my point, you're right about all of that. My point was more just shame on all of us for mentioning this team without talking about the biggest flaw they had, which is that their superstar player didn't play like a superstar this year for whatever reason, whether it was the approach, the hitting coach influence from the outside, the issues inside. I don't know what the reason is. That's up to somebody smarter than me and more engaged inside that clubhouse to figure out. But they got to find a way to get the Julio Rodriguez they paid money to back the way the Royals had Bobby Witt this year.
But the guy they paid money to
chance.
was that guy. That's who he's been. He's only been in the league, 3 years, and he's been spotty. He's had long stretches as a rookie. Obviously, he came in. He was striking out a bunch. He was getting squeezed by the home plate ump.
After that beginning of his rookie year, he was reasonably consistent the rest of that season.
For a rookie. But then the following year was exactly what we saw this year, where you just had these long droughts of no production, and then all of a sudden he couldn't be stopped.
For me, the Julio thing is actually, I think it's simple. I know that sounds stupid because it's not actually simple.
Then why aren't you the hitting coach?
I should be. I would tell Julio one thing and one thing only: swing less.
Swing less.
Literally, just swing less. The average across baseball this year was about 47%. Players swing at a roughly 47% of pitches that they see. The best players in baseball, the Juan Sotos, swing at like 35, 38%. A guy like Randy Arozarena is like 42%. Julio Rodriguez, 55% this year. That number has gone up every year of his career. You know when it came down? In the last month, when he actually started hitting again. The dude just swings too much. He's an incredibly good hitter. Just swing less. And I honestly believe it would take care of a ton of his problems.
Charlie, what did you see in him in the second half?
I feel like this experience he's having now is teaching him so much. He's only 24 years old. Think about how young he is and what he's experienced at this point. It's easy to expect the world of him. We handed him the keys, right? Say, hey, go carry us to the promised land. But you're going to learn a lot about yourself when you're that young. You don't know who you are sometimes, right? You don't know where you are individually, internal and external. So to see what he's done this year, I think, like you said, his numbers weren't that bad, but we're expecting him to be great. And the one thing is, we can't rely on him to bring the Mariners to the World Series, because look at the Angels, right? The Angels have Mike Trout. He's one of the best players ever. And
Ohtani.
And Ohtani at one point, right? And they hadn't done
Anthony
anything.
Rendon.
Stop.
That's right.
You know what? But that's true. But they didn't have the pitching the Mariners had.
For sure.
If they just got Julio to hit what you would expect him to have done this year.
Right.
This
But
team's in the postseason.
I don't think we can rely on him solely to get us to the championship.
Agreed.
It's too hard to put it on one guy. It's just it's and we've seen if he's not playing well, the team's not playing well. So there's got to be an addition or a mix of new people and new ideas, new thoughts, and on how the offense can show up day in and day out and take the weight off Julio's shoulders.
I love that you pointed out the age, and I think it's so easy, and I've done this before. I've been very hard on Julio at times, and it's like, look, if you're the guy, you're the guy. I don't care how old you are. You've got that contract, but that's still not going to change the fact that he was 22, 23, and now 24, and not knowing quite who you are sometimes. I've seen that from him quite a bit through the years. And that,
you mean personally, like who he is personally?
I think he knows who he is internally, but who he is in the game, and who he is as a member of the team, and who he is in representing the team. And I think that's outside noise, and you have to do it. And I think he needs to do it more, to be honest with you, but he has to be comfortable with it before he does it. And I can see times where you see that he just doesn't know at that point. And he's going to try, and it'll sound polished when it comes out, but you can hear that he's still kind of figuring out who he is and what he should be doing.
Such a bummer. I really thought that was going to go away this year. I felt like the whole All-Star game here in Seattle in 23 was a pretty good excuse for Julio, right? I mean, I know we don't like excuses, but sometimes I don't mind them when other people are making them as opposed to when the player themselves is making it. And I think it was fair to say, like, hey, this guy put a lot of pressure on himself. He was supposed to be like the face of this All-Star game being held in his home park. His face was all over that thing being around that week. And I'm sure that was hard on him at age, 22, 23 at the time
22.
to live up to all of that. And I got a lot of grace for that. After the All-Star break, he kind of took off, right? As Bob said, in July into August, Julio was arguably the best hitter in baseball. I really, truly felt with all of that off of his shoulders this year, I thought he was going to be an MVP candidate this year. really truly believed, age 23, like it was all going to come together for Julio this year. And the fact that it didn't, well, I'm sure I agree with both of you guys on him trying, learning and figuring it out. I really kind of thought that would have happened last year.
How much of that was exasperated by the rest of the lineup failing around him?
Bingo. And that's
question.
what I want to get to now. I mean, that was a key this year. Why should he be any different than the rest of the offense in the first half? What happened and what needs to be fixed? Has it been fixed? What did we see? Because I think the expectation for the Mariners by the Mariners themselves were to win the division this year. That is a completely fair expectation as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I think, did anybody here not have that expectation for them?
This year?
Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to win the division this year.
Okay.
I'd hope. I thought they were.
Do you think it was a fair expectation to put on them?
This year?
Yeah.
I just didn't think the roster was as good as it was. I mean, I like the team. I know I'm crazy, but I like the team the year before. I like the roster the year before that more than I like the roster this past
Colton
year.
Wong and A.J. Pollock and Tommy LaStella?
Yep. Yeah, I like that roster better than the one they started with this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But even
That's
though
a
you
different
like that.
We need a different hour for that conversation.
Well,
Maybe
because it's
some
not those
medication.
guys. It's with Teoscar Hernandez.
Well, he was the one.
But we didn't know at the time that Teoscar can't hit at T-Mobile Park.
Okay,
Just
well,
please
it's
stop.
crooked. It's the
Stop
batter's
it.
eye. It's all crooked.
Yeah, well. So Julio, along with the rest of the offense, failed in the first half. There was just out of the gates, and I don't think anybody saw it coming. It might be, this player, it's too much to expect that Mitch Haniger is going to turn into Mitch Haniger of 2021 or 2020. Too much. It's too much to expect that maybe Garver is going to be his every other year Mitch Garver. You can think that. Or maybe there'll be some adjustment. But for everything, for J.P. Crawford not to be J.P. Crawford, for Ty France to have the struggles that he had, for everybody that I just listed not to live up to what they were to be, and then Julio as well. What went wrong? Was it the personnel? Was it the decisions that were made there? Was it the coaching? What happened? Because that is what set the tone. You can have all the pitching you want in the world, but if you don't score runs, it just ain't going to happen. And that's what we ultimately saw this year. We saw some good stuff at the end of the year. We'll get into what that might mean going forward. But what do they need to look at and what got them to where they were in the first half?
Didn't it feel contagious? It felt like as they struggled, as everybody struggled, everybody started pressing more. Everybody felt like, okay, I got to get us out of this. Everybody, it was crazy to see 1 through 9. Josh Rojas was your best hitter. Mitch Haniger started the year well, if you remember. It was way back. Didn't last very long, but he was like one of your best hitters, along with Josh Rojas eventually, and everybody else was struggling. I mean, it was weird to watch, and you could almost feel it when they'd be up there at the plate. There was a tension and just I got to get it going. I mean, Luis Urias was terrible. Everybody that they had brought in to fix their problems were failing and flailing up there, and that included Garver, included Polanco, Urias, everybody. It was a weird thing to watch, and it felt like it just became contagious. And to have somebody like J.P. Crawford, who's perceived as one of the leaders out there, leading off, going up there, and yeah, he'd battle and he'd force the guy to throw pitches, but he wasn't getting on base. His on base was terrible. He had a terrible year leading up to his injury. So it was, I can't blame, Brant Brown or Jarrett DeHart because some of these guys are veterans. I don't know how much to me, that's one of the more elusive things. I don't know the role of a hitting coach when it comes to a veteran. How much impact do they truly have? They're not teaching you how to hit. You know how to hit. That's why you're at this level, and that's why you're making the money you make. They're not, you're going to fine-tune your mechanics, and they're going to pick up on things that you're doing wrong at the plate, perhaps, but I can't blame Brant Brown and Jarrett DeHart for a complete failure of veterans, proven commodities in your lineup that just face-planted for whatever reason.
Yeah, lack of execution is just, it was apparent every night. Too many missed opportunities. Too many times you watch a game and they couldn't seemingly just put the ball in play, right? It was so painful to watch some of these losses. I wish I knew exactly what was wrong, but from the outside looking in, I would think that they would have so much more confidence knowing that every game they went into play, their pitching staff was going to hold it down and they were going to have a chance to win, right? All we needed was a couple runs to get to win. And I think we saw their record. If they score 4 runs or something, it was asinine how good they were. And 4 runs is not a lot. It's like, it's so simple when we look at it, but the idea that they just can't find the barrel to the ball and put it in play and the strikeouts, is it Is it really coaching? Is it lack of execution? Is it I'm looking at these players, I think they're going to be better than they are, and they're really not that good in the first place. The lineup and the all the 220 and under averages, it's like what's going on out here? Are they playing? Are these guys good enough? So there's just so many questions to ask about the offense and where they're going and how that will change. Obviously, with Dan and hopefully Edgar continuing to take over, that can change the mentality of what it takes to be a hitter at this level. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Bob asked a good question about what does a hitting coach do? I mean, like, that's one of the great mysteries. Do I think that, Edgar Martinez came in here as a hitting coach in the last 6 weeks and fixed all of the players? Not really. I mean, he was here as a hitting coach a couple of years ago, and he didn't fix all of the players then. Do I think it's possible that, he reached Julio and was able to kind of find a way of communicating with a fellow superstar that finally kind of got through to him? Yeah, I think that's very much possible, and hopefully, they'll be able to continue that if Edgar's not the full-time hitting coach next year, which seems like is likely to be the case. Was there, and I know, Shannon, you've talked about this, an overflow of information? I mean, what does a hitting coach do? I think in this day and age, they help distill all of the information that is available to a team into something that is digestible for a player, right? Was that Jared DeHart's specialty? I don't think so. Is Brant Brown an A-plus communicator? No, I don't think so. I don't know that either of those guys were necessarily the right player to do that. Shannon, I know you've talked before about the two different pitching coaches and how those two guys have different strengths that have allowed them to work really well together, right? Trent Blank and Pete Woodworth. Maybe it's worth explaining that, because I think that they were missing the Pete Woodworth element of the whole of the hitting side of it.
Yeah, for those that don't know, so the Mariners' Pete Woodworth is the pitching coach. Trent Blank is now the pitching strategist, coordinator, and I think in charge of it for the entire organization, not just the big league level. He was in the bullpen the year before, but he's kind of the brains guy. He's the magician. He's the one that can take a pitch and change things. And Woodworth is, without a doubt, the communicator, the feel guy, also knows a lot about what Trent is talking about, but Trent's just kind of on another level with that. And I actually saw Pete when he was in Double-A and saw him coach when he was there, and it was the same thing. I mean, he has the guys. They know that, and they absolutely believe in him, and he is the communicator, and he has the confidence, and they take that confidence. And Trent was somebody that was a little bit quieter, but, just the more you are a pitcher and around him, you're like, man, this guy can help me out with this.
Kind of the genius behind
genius behind all of that. And there'd been a thought for some time that the Mariners needed that on the hitting side, too, where Jarrett DeHart is the technical guy. There was no question.
He's the Trent Blank of the
hitting.
hitting.
He was the Trent Blank of the hitting and for the organization, and that's what he was doing before, but they needed that communicator. And as Charlie knows, hitters are all nuts. It's like everyone needs their own hitting coach.
Totally sane.
Which and if there were a hitter, if there was a hitter in the other seat, I would say, the pitchers are. But they are. I mean, they really, I think, worry about things a lot more and stew over them. And because the pitching, you have all the codes now. You do. You know what you need to do. It's all broken down.
Pitching's easier than hitting. If you look at the numbers,
it is.
It's just you're
in
way
control.
more likely
to
miss a barrel than hit.
Came up in the wrong era.
Yeah, seriously. So to come back to it, I do think that they were missing that one guy who could translate, and it clearly was not Brant Brown. Jarrett DeHart then took over. I don't think that's what Jarrett DeHart does.
Right.
And so I do think there was a little paralysis by overanalysis of just not being able to synthesize all of the information that they had with somebody who could help hitters who were, pretty plain-spoken folks understand it.
Every hitter's different, and every hitter is going to take that information of how does it going to help me, right? Is this person ultimately have my best interest? Because you realize as a player, you are in control of your own career. So how do I take the information I'm getting and then apply it to the game and think that, it's going to work? I mean, I remember my rookie year, I followed the scouting report and boom, he gave up a homer, right? It's like, did what I was supposed to do, and then didn't work. So, it's like, okay, you start thinking like, okay, well, how do I take the information and know that it is going to help me, but I'm not trying to play the information. I still have to go out there and execute and play the game and play what got me here. So there's a bunch of nuance that goes in, and as a hitting coach, you have to be on every day with every individual. Some players say, don't talk to me. I'm in my zone. Don't say anything. Just keep going, keep doing your thing. And some guys are, hey, I'm going to take you out to lunch. I'm going to put my arm around you. I'm going to make you feel better about yourself. You have the talent, but it's just seemingly locked right now. We just need to unlock it.
I'll go one other thing that I think was problematic at times this year, and they didn't always have an adult in the room on the team. And I don't think it's
Stole what I was going to bring up
Oh,
already,
were you?
Mike. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I love it. I love it.
This is going back to Shannon's idea of stealing from somebody
Perfect.
else.
Do you think Haniger's a child? He's
No, but there's a difference between being Carlos Santana and Justin Turner and being a veteran. Those guys are veterans plus.
And they're
right?
rare in the league. This isn't like
Absolutely.
10, 15 years ago where every clubhouse had one or two. They're not every
There
clubhouse.
aren't as many
there
guys
aren't
like
as
that.
many.
It's not a shot at Mitch Haniger or any of the veterans who were here this year, Mitch Garver, any of them. But things changed a little bit when Justin Turner got here. And, I think
Things changed a lot when Santana left.
Absolutely.
That's
right? They have not valued. I mean, how many times did Scott mention the importance of just having Justin Upton here for like 3 weeks and what he did for the team, even though he couldn't play anymore, just being an adult and sort of helping this team look at things in a different perspective. Because baseball's such a game of failure, Charlie, you can probably speak to this and some of the guys you've been around. I feel like that's almost more important in baseball than it is in any other sport. The other one would be hockey, just because some of the guys are so unbelievably young that captaincy becomes super important. But when you got a legitimate major league veteran who is a leader and an adult and all of that, what does it do?
Sign Justin Turner. That's what I'm telling you right now. I mean, let this veteran presence set the tone and to be an adult. I think 24 years old, you don't know who you are, Julio. I understand you're learning a lot, but I look at when we signed Nelson Cruz and had the impact he had on the clubhouse as a older guy that had been there and done that and won and been in the World Series and knew how to work and knew how to just do everything the right way. It's one thing when you're in the clubhouse and you have the veteran presence, setting the tone and doing the things the way that should be done. And it's another thing when you have coaches telling you. So if you're a team full of young guys, who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the guy that steps up to have that fun conversation on the bus or do something that brings the team together? And if it's always relying on the coaches and the coaches aren't necessarily getting into the clubhouse, at least for me, sometimes it always felt like maybe they don't have a full pulse on what the clubhouse is based on moves they've made in the past. It's like, well, that was a very detrimental move in the clubhouse, right? Go back to the Graveman move. You're like, oh no, you got rid of that guy? Like the only guy, I mean, there are
was that the reaction? Oh no.
Oh no. And you sent him where? Come on, So I think there are certain people that completely keep the clubhouse together and keep the motivation going to get there in the end, knowing no matter what you're going through, winning or losing, they can set the tone on that day-to-day presence.
This is a great place to take a break because this sets us up for part 2 perfectly. We're going to move this forward, and this team was a different team for the last 2 months of the season, and I want to get your thoughts on what was real in what we were seeing, and that goes back to what you were talking about and what you just introduced there. So that will be in part 2.